This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Hi there. Thank you so much for being a part of Raising Me. This is where we take those everyday things that we experience as parents, both big and small, right to the experts for advice. I'm Adrienne Stein, longtime journalist and a mom of 3. Today's episode is actually a little bit different, and it all started with a viral video. I first saw it while just drinking my coffee early one morning and was just so taken by this woman's passion about the mental wellness of kids today. Basically, she's calling us parents out. She is a parent herself, by the way. Well, it turns out she is a longtime child therapist specializing in cyber trauma, has a TED Talk called Our Bodies, Brains, and Technology, The Real Social Dilemma. She's an author, and we are lucky enough that Knibbs accepted our invitation to talk about her recently viral video and a whole lot more here on Raising Me. And she's joining us from the UK too, which is pretty cool. We're going to play that video for you. And really, she is sharing some hard truths about how we have been failing children in the online space for years as a society. It is not meant to point fingers at us parents. It really is a wake-up call to better understanding and better strategies. So here's part of our conversation. Kath, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. And yeah, should we say, let's dive in, let's get started.
Let's dive right in, because I want to actually dive right in with the video that I first saw of you. And I'm just sitting and drinking my coffee in the morning. Full disclosure, I didn't follow you. It's one of those videos that finds you.
Yeah.
And it is really more about the audio than the visuals, because I do want to play it for our listeners so they can hear what this message is and why I think it struck a chord for so many people. I mean, right now it's over 5 million views, and the copy on it, I see you shaking your head like I can't even believe this, but the copy on it says, "Modern kids are not okay." So I'm going to go ahead and play this video.
I've been a child therapist for well over 12 years, but the kinds of children that are ending up in my therapy office are nothing like I've ever seen before. When I tell people about the kinds of things that I'm seeing on a regular basis, they laugh, they don't believe me, or they go into shock. I'm seeing children under 10, talking about extreme sexual behaviours. I've got young boys telling me how they're abusing their bodies, desperate to get ripped like the fitness influencers. I've spent my career specialising in online harms and technology, so maybe I just see a certain type of child. But I'm inundated with the same issues over and over again. Children being sextorted, groomed, cyberbullying, struggling with body issues. And yet, when I talk to the children, 90% of the time, they don't tell their parents what's happening. There's something big happening beneath the surface. We're about to see an avalanche of many more children struggling with the issues I see in the office. Surely I'm not the only person noticing this, but I don't see it being spoken about in the media, and it drives me up the wall. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I'm kind of terrified that this is going to get worse if we don't do something about it. I'm realising it's not something I can fix on my own. I need parents, you, to give a shit and get on board with the programme. When I'm working with the parents, we get great results. I'll keep on making videos, maybe not all of them in the car. This will be to help parents. If you've got any comments, put them down below. I'll try and help.
So what inspired you to make this video? Because obviously we're listening to it right now, but if you look at it, it looks like it is very unplanned. You're sitting in a car, you've got one of those big cozy blanket type things wrapped around you. Where did the inspiration come from?
So people who know me know that I rant a lot. And that ranting comes from a place of activism, from working in this space for a long, long time and having lots of conversations with people and working with the children who suffer with these issues. So if I say, whilst I've been a child therapist, it's actually 30, and I'm ashamed to say that I said 12 years and it's actually over 13. I've been in the technology space and engineering space and computing space for over 30 years. I'm beginning to show my age a little bit here. But my children grew up with somebody who had an inkling of what was happening, watched and monitored what they were doing, engaged with them throughout all of their processes of gaming, social media, got curious. And then I went to work as a psychotherapist, working mainly with child trauma. And what I started to see, this is going well over a decade ago, were the children coming into the practice that were telling me about cyberbullying. And when I went off to do my master's, I was speaking to other psychotherapists, counsellors, and saying, what do you understand about cyberbullying? And I was finding a wall of silence. And it gets me angry. It gets me so angry that we are failing children, and we have been failing children in the online space for 27 years. The internet is 27 and a half years of age, nearly 28. And we don't have in place a coordinated system throughout the world, because there are so many different rules for so many different countries and so many different ways that we access the internet, that we have failed a generation of children. And those children are now adults. And it was working with my social media manager, and we were talking about the kinds of videos that I might do. And I actually said, I've got a couple of rants to get off my chest. And that was one of them. And, yep, I'm not exactly dressed up for the part. I'm not stood on a red carpet. It is me in my car. I'd got to work and I thought, yeah, these are the things I have to say. These are the things I need to be talking about. And what it has resulted in is an influx of direct messages from both parents and children and professionals, and people wanting to talk to me. A lot of people saying, I've seen this, but nobody's helping me. I'm struggling with this. And the biggest issue is we tend to do a lot of parent pointing. So at the moment, over in the US, you've had the Congress meeting with the big four tech giants, and there was a lot of misconstrued information, a lot of finger pointing at the technology companies. And the technology companies, I'm not saying they get off scot-free here when I make this statement, but they cannot solve a human problem using technology. We have to do that. We have to do this as a society. Hence why I'd got to the point in the video where I was like, I need you to give a shit, because what has happened at the moment is tech blames, government for not educating children. Children says, but hang on a minute, it's not our responsibility. It should be our parents or the teachers. The teachers are overwhelmed and they say, we don't know what we're supposed to be teaching, and so on and so on and so on. And for 27 years, we've ended up with pockets of people who work in specialised areas. So we've got pockets of people who deal with CSAM, which is the child sexual abuse material. That's what I mainly deal with. And then there are companies and organisations that deal with cyberbullying, but they're not syncing up with the CSAP. So what I ended up doing was writing some books, and it's probably because the books haven't taken off in outside of academia. I think that's what it is and incredibly, it's difficult to write a book for people in academia that can be read by parents, but that's exactly what I've done. I've told stories, I've explained things in a trauma-informed way, because I want people to understand the breadth and depth of these issues.
In the video, you also say, I just don't think, the post says, I don't think parents realize what's going on.
Yeah.
That's fair, right? I mean, I know my 16-year-old has an Instagram account. She has a Snapchat account. Those are her two social medias. I have the logins to both. I checked them quite well in the beginning, and now, sort of trust that she's doing the right thing. There are a couple of things. Like, for one, it is a time thing for parents.
Yes.
I couldn't possibly spend the time I need to fully understand the way teenagers are utilizing social media. It doesn't mean I care any less, but it is complex. So what should we as parents be asking our kids? And what should we understand knowing that all these things are happening?
So it's an absolutely impossible job nowadays to be a parent who is, so often I see the term digital parent, technology parent, parenting with technology, media literacy, digital literacy. The problem we have is understanding. So I'm going to use an academic term. It's the nomenclature. It's the words we use to describe these spaces. What I would say is, generally I talk about a metaphor, and this is the easiest way for parents to really grasp what the technology space is like. So we all know pretty much what a sports match looks like, and we all know what a city park is like. So if I use the metaphor of a city park and I say, okay, let's go with, I don't know, the city park in New York. When you go there, I would expect that it's quite clean, that there isn't dog doo-doo all over the place, that there isn't fighting and racism and child abuse and all, I don't know, discarded drug needles. You would expect that the park is looked after. And if you were to take your child to that park, you would say, and this is the way to understand screen time, you wouldn't say you can have an hour in the park. You would walk through the park, you'd talk to your child, and you'd say, okay, that group of people over there, we need to be just a little bit careful because maybe they're having a drink of alcohol. So we know that people who have drink become less inhibited. So as a precaution, what we would do is we would keep our distance. And that dog over there has got a muzzle on. So what we wouldn't do is we wouldn't go over and start patting the dog. That's the way that we parent generally. And when it comes to the online space, we've been led a merry dance, and it's not the fault of parents, okay? I really do want to emphasize this. We've made an assumption that those online spaces look after children in the same way that a city park is maintained, and that there might be people patrolling the area, making sure that there aren't any crimes, and that there's law enforcement, and there's places children can go and call up a friend, or there's open spaces they can go where other children can be seen and they can collect together, but also they can be watched by a number of parents. What we actually have in the cyberspace at the moment are city parks with the worst kinds of criminals and perpetrators of crimes against children in those parks. So when I say that, that sounds terrifying, but not all of the parks are like that all the way throughout. So what you have to do as a parent is navigate each of those park environments. So let's just take the most popular social media platforms, Snapchat, WhatsApp. They are, again, I'll use a metaphor, a little bit like a shopping mall. I know you're based in the US, so I can use that phrase, right? A shopping mall. There's lots of shops, but who's in the shops? What are they selling in the shops? Are there any secret corridors in the malls? Who's loitering around the malls? Who's patrolling it? Where's the law enforcement? How does a child go and seek help in that space? So again, looking at, for example, Snapchat, there are things that will identify where a child is in that shopping mall or in that city park. And that's the part that we call Snap Maps. There's an artificial intelligence bot in the system that children can talk to. And whilst that sounds really safe on one hand, what is the bot advising and suggesting to the child? And what kind of relationship is the child forming with that AI bot? And then you have the shops. Some shops have videos of ASMR type videos and sounds, of things that children like. And they do get called satisfying videos. But then there's the news, and then there's the local feed, and then there's the groups they can go in. And then when they've achieved a particular snap streak, then they can be invited into bigger areas where people are sharing videos. Now, in Snapchat, there really isn't any regulation, any oversight, and children can be exposed to all kinds of videos in those spaces. And that's akin to a child walking into a shop that has got, I don't know, drugs paraphernalia, sex paraphernalia, pornography at the back, gambling, slot machine. And when you start to describe it like that, it can sound like parents have left their children unsupervised. So taking an active interest doesn't mean spying. I am not anti-tracking technology in terms of, because most of the social media uses it, but I'm not anti-tracking technology. What I am is anti-intrusiveness into a child's life. We need to be conversive, cooperative, and collaborative. And what we tend to do is get very frightened, and then we say, well, show me your text messages and show me this and let me have a look at that. And I'm tracking you on this. And what we need are those conversations with our children to say, okay, where are you going, honey? Who are you talking to? How would you report somebody if you felt uncomfortable? Who would you tell? Because sometimes as the parents, I've raised two boys, we're not always the people they want to talk to. So do they have some trusted others? And quite often what the research is showing, and certainly over the past 10 years, I've found children will look to supportive friends rather than a trusted adult. So it used to be, if you need to tell anybody anything and disclose something, you go to a trusted adult. Quite often, children will message each other and talk to each other in these spaces. And that's where that kind of reflection on the 90% of the children are not telling their parents.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
When you're describing Snapchat like that, it makes me think, oh boy, did we make a mistake? I mean, we didn't even allow Snapchat till she was 16 and all the things we thought we were doing right. But I think it could be easy to say, well, kids shouldn't be on social media. And that's just not the reality of the world today. This is how they communicate. Even her sports team communicates on some of the social apps, like to set up practices and things. And so if you don't have whatever the social app is, then you miss out on this communication.
Mm-hmm.
Saying no to it just simply isn't realistic.
No.
So how do we create that healthy relationship with technology, knowing that it is just part of our kids' lives?
I don't want to kind of take your language to pieces there, but I think sometimes this is what we do, is we say the technology. It's not the technology is a tool and a medium. And if you think of it as a medium in which we connect with other people, and that's where we go to get our needs met. This is one of the reasons why I did my TED talk and talked about, if we don't get our needs met out here, we will go looking for them in there. So the technology is only a facilitative medium. So what I would be saying is, this is parenting 101, and this is why parents are skilled at this. This is because we've all navigated through our childhood. Some people don't always remember adolescence. I certainly do, and it wasn't a fantastic, smooth journey all the way through it. And that's one of the things that I did with my children is, for example, when they were quite younger, the gaming console was in the main living room, and I would potter around doing my cups of tea, making the dinner, whatever I was. And I was listening to the conversation. I was listening to how they interacted with their peers. And I would have questions. I would talk to them afterwards. So tell me, how do you even know where somebody is on the map when you say that and they say that and they say that? And of course, I'd get the roll eyes. Oh, Mom, it's so easy because blah, blah, blah. Well, what does that acronym mean? And how does that work? And who's that speaking? And whilst I did know the answer to a lot of these questions, I didn't know. Because actually what I was testing was their critical thinking skills. And, I was asking, how would you know if somebody was who they said they were? So there's a term that children used to use a long time ago. It doesn't get used as much now. And the term is randomers. And this is when Facebook first began. So what you would get are people you knew from your classroom. Then you would get friends of friends, and then you would get randomers. And the randomers were the people you had to check out. And I would ask my kids, dial it back. How do you know the friends are who they say they are? How do you know that person? So I can give an example that on TikTok, where it's also another viral space. I get DMs from children who say, I am 13. I don't know that. I couldn't verify whether they were or they weren't. And even if I went to their profile, I am aware that in this day and age, you can complete a profile and it not be genuine content. So in the same vein, I constantly have to be thinking like this. And I know that children under roughly 12 don't have those necessary critical thinking skills because they haven't got a brain that's developed to do that just yet. We know this from child development. This is why I'm writing the books and I'm now doing the content, because I think that's the bit that we've missed in online safety. There's a lot of do's, a lot of don'ts. And what we don't take into account is our child and their abilities to do things. So for the parents, it's, yes, you would have a conversation about Snapchat. Yes, this technology is here to stay. And we're already into immersive environments. And I will be doing some content around that because those environments require another set of thinking skills because of the way our bodies work. And certainly parents, you know your child. You know if your child could detect a fibber. You know if your child would be able to detect so they sometimes call them scammers and hackers, even though that's a cybersecurity term. Children might talk about, but it's somebody cheating in the game. Well, how do you know they're cheating? Because they've done this and they've done this and they've done that and they've done the other. So by asking the questions, you get the child's thinking pattern, and that's where you can start to steer in. I see how you got to that conclusion. Well, here's something that we grown-ups know about why people do that. And what we've seen is, people might want to, so I'm going to use some gaming terms now. They might want to do what's called camping out, which is hiding and purposefully waiting for you to come past to shoot at you. Well, why would they do that? Or maybe because they want to win, or maybe because they need to do that in order to feel superior, or maybe they're just mean. And you can go through asking your child why people might behave in the way that they do online and wait for their answers. And then that's where your parenting skills come in to support and collaborate and cooperate with it.
Well, that's something to think about. And there is so much to unpack, but if there was one piece of advice for parents to take away when it comes to just living in the virtual world, what would that be?
So I've said for a long, long time, it's always conversations, because that's how we talk to our children. Now, human beings are storytellers, and through stories, through conversation, we might not get the nuance of I could tell you what a bungee jump is like. I could say, oh, it's exhilarating and it's exciting, and you also get really scared, but then there's this and the wind rushes past. Conversations help us understand the risks and dangers, and we need to have conversations with our children. But there are going to be some children who go, I want to try a bungee jump because I don't believe everything that you say. And after the bungee jump, and this is the work that I do, and I also say that as a parent, that's when we go, yes, that was a bit of a silly choice, wasn't it? Because actually you really didn't like it. And actually what you did do got yourself into a pickle, or what you did do wasn't the greatest forward planning, and maybe what you said to that person online wasn't very kind, and now we've got to make a reparation for that, and here are the consequences, and you get to talk through the consequences. Now, I am just going to say there's a very loud conversation taking place at the moment from a journalist called Abigail Shrier, who would say that I am being a very liberal parent, I'm being a very liberal therapist, and what I'm doing is I'm not allowing children to build resilience, and I'm not putting safeguards in place to help them understand that what we do is we tell children what to do. What I'm saying is the research over 40, 50, 60, 70 years, this goes all the way back to the 1950s. We know that attachment, connection, empathy, and tolerance and compassion are the things that help children develop into well-regulated adults. And the only way we can do that is to talk to our children about the risks, knowing sometimes they are going to take those risks. And after they have taken the risks, that's when we help them and contain them and hold them and say, yeah, that wasn't the best of moments, really, was it? And This is why I model this behaviour in therapy. If I get it wrong with a client, or I don't understand something the parent said, I will go back and go, yeah, I got that completely wrong, didn't I? I made a mess of that, or that was my fault. How can I make a reparation?
Acknowledging that we're all just human and we're all trying to figure it out. Kath, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I also want to let our listeners know we'll have all kinds of resources, and we'll have links to Kath's pages as well on our website, wgme.com/raisingme. So appreciate you joining us for the conversation, time change and all.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
So grateful that Kath could join us for this conversation. And a takeaway for me really is working to do better at being with our kids in the online space, connect with them in and about it, and just generally understanding this is part of their life and their experience growing up. And also just knowing, like with anything growing up, online or not, they are going to take risks and make mistakes, probably many of them. And just like in the real life setbacks, we have to be there for them without judgment and with empathy for the online ones too. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. And I want to mention too that Kath has a really insightful and important take on how to approach video games with our kids. And that episode will be coming soon, so keep an ear out. We appreciate you being a part of Raising Me. This episode is edited by Megan Littlefield and produced with Nate Eldridge. Please give us a follow wherever you get your podcasts and wherever you are. I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.